Good morning, good morning. If we can go ahead and get y'all to settle down just a little bit. Anybody having any issues with the Wi-Fi? Got a couple of hands, a few hands. The information's right up here. Should be able to get to Bar-Cause Summit. Invalid.
Is there a space between Cause and Summit?
We shall see. There is a space between Cause and Summit if that's causing any issues. Underline. A space.
Oh, is it underscore or is it space? Oh, there we go.
Thank you, Miss Anna. A little bit of housekeeping. If y'all need to go to the restrooms, they're out the long hallway to the left beyond the elevators. Can you hear me? No, you're good. Ready? If I can get everybody to take your seats so we can get started.
Type in the internet address for the poll everywhere.
Okay. Go to the right bottom of this. Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, you could just type it on that page.
Okay, I was going to grab it though.
Okay.
If they go here though, they can just use it.
If they've got the app.
They don't have to have the app. Yeah. So can we make an announcement about if they type in that address, that it will open up a webpage for them?
Has everyone downloaded the polleverywhere.com app? And if not, you can go straight to pollev.com/TDLR1995. That's where we'll be able to take y'all's input. Everybody in this room and everybody listening at home would be able to actually provide us input if you get onto that pollev.com/TDLR1995. What should come up is a message that tells you we don't have an open live summit right now, but once we start it, y'all will get questions prompted to y'all where y'all can give y'all's input. What a wonderful turnout today. Just amazing to me. Grab a seat. Good morning. Good morning. We're going to make a few more copies before we get started for some participants. God bless you.
Should I get moved chairs out of there? I'm gonna move those
We could do that. Just a few more minutes. If you haven't already done it, download the Poll Everywhere app or go to pollev.com/TDLR1995. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. All right, sounds good. My name is David Gonzalez. I'm the Director of Regulatory Program Management here at the agency. Such a wonderful turnout for y'all's industry, right? A round of applause. Everybody's here Monday. Yeah, that's awesome. We were going to throw a party, but we didn't know if anyone was going to show up. This is awesome. This is really great. So we are going to be treating this as an advisory input meeting, if you will. We actually have our advisory board members here, so I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. But just a few reminders. In order to participate fully, we have everybody in the room. We've got microphones that we're going to be handing out so that everybody at home can also hear the input you're providing. If you don't use the microphone, nobody at home will be able to hear you. So I know there's a lot of angst. You put a microphone on somebody and they might want to do karaoke. They may actually be a little bit nervous about talking. We need to hear you on the microphone or they're not going to be able to hear you on at home if they're listening in. That's important. If you want to participate and you don't get the chance with the microphone, maybe you want to be up in front of everybody. This is the way to do it. We can take all of y'all's input via the pollev.com/TDLR1995. It's very important because we're bringing everybody together here today because we want your input. It's very important that you take the time, and if you're having any difficulty, we've got some people all around the sides here that can help you. Just need to raise your hand, and we'll keep an eye out to see if we can't help you with any of the data entry that would be. If your thumbs get a little bit tired, we may be able to help you out with the audio microphone, but I want to make sure we gather everybody's input today. Excuse me. All right, well, let's go ahead and start with introductions of our advisory board members, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Ron Jemison Jr., your Barber Advisory Chair, and we want to welcome everybody here today. It's a great turnout. I don't know if y'all saw me. I stood up and took a picture, so this was great. Next week is the actual meeting, next Monday. That's right. It's the advisory board meeting. We would love to have y'all participation at those meetings live. Well, let me introduce our advisory board. We have enough here to have a quorum, so go ahead, Ms.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Wasser. I am an advisory board member.
Good morning. My name is James Bowens, and I'm also an advisory board member.
Thank you.
Chairman Jimison, thank you very much. Advisory board members, thank you all very much. The shameless plug for next week's meeting, great idea. We want the participation. That's how we do our business here at TDLR. So I think next on the agenda, I'm supposed to turn it over to our illustrious leader. And I don't think he needs an introduction. Most of y'all that have done any business with our agency knows this gentleman. He goes and travels, does a lot of our presentations, also known as a poet. Without any further ado, Mr. Brian Francis.
Good morning, good morning. Man, barbers come out on Mondays. This is beautiful, this is beautiful. So here's the deal. You're here for a reason, to give us your input. I ran into a beautiful young lady in the parking lot. She said, I'm here to hear what y'all got to say. It's not about TDLR today. It's about you and your industry. Where do you want to take it? So here's the question before you. The law changed for cosmetologists, said it's going to move their hours from 1,500 down to 1,000. That is done. So the question for us and cosmetologists today is, how do we allocate those hours? The law didn't change for barbers because your hours are set in the rule. So technically, you don't have to do anything. But you got to ask yourself, as business people, is that going to work out? Because you'll have a cosmetology school that has a 1,000-hour program. That student's going to get through in 6 months, and then they can take the, 300-hour crossover program, and they can become a barber quicker on that path than here. So today's question is, and you're not making the final decision, so I don't want anyone to think, oh my God, they backed me in the corner. I had to come out kicking and fighting. You don't have to come out kicking and fighting today. You got to come out kicking and thinking today. If you decide, if you believe that the hours can be handled at 1,000 hours, today's conversation is simply saying, how would you allocate those 1,000 hours? How would you place them? Would you put 80 hours for shaving and 200 hours for doing the clipper? Would you put 50 hours for the manicure? And barbers don't manicure. All those things get to be ironed out today, but today's focus is getting your opinion and your position on if we scoot these 1,000 hours, if you do it, nothing's decided today. Let everyone say nothing's decided today. I got that from my Aunt C. She was a reverend in the AME church. She'd always look at me when she wanted me to repeat something that she knew I needed to hear, like, everybody going to heaven. Everybody going to heaven? Oh, I don't know, Aunt C. You don't know my life. You don't know my life. So today's question is, if it goes down to 1,000 hours, how would you allocate those hours? You don't have to do anything. You can keep it at 1,500. But we're just trying to put it in front of you as an option for you to consider that if it were to be lowered to 1,000, how would you want it to be allocated? That's the question before you, and I'm so grateful that y'all came out today. We had the bigger room for the cosmetologists. Now, I see a couple of them sitting in there incognito. They kind of hide amongst y'all right now. They're trying to see what the conversation, they blushing now. I love it. But we thought that the room would be half empty for the barbers. What a blessing. What a blessing to see y'all come out. Take advantage of this opportunity. If you're not comfortable with the technology we're going to use to gather your opinions, raise your hand. We got people with feet and hands. They'll bring a microphone over to you, okay? Y'all good? Thank y'all for being here. I appreciate it.
So as you know, barbering is not the only thing we do here. We've got a couple slides up here that I'm going to go through just to show you all the different programs we oversee. The most important one today that we're discussing this morning is barbering, so we want your feedback and input. There was a previous slide up there that I think is really important. We have our core values. One of those core values is respect. Today is about respecting the industry. We want your feedback, but you're going to see some signs up on the wall over here. They're called brainstorming rules. That one's extremely important to today's activities as well. We can only do things with the information you provide us if we let everybody give their ideas. So all ideas will be recorded. No idea is ridiculous, and you may be upset about what somebody says. You may not agree with what they have to say. You have an opportunity to speak up as well. So it's very important that we gather all the ideas that we can and let everybody speak. No judgments. The hemming and hawing in the background is not going to help the conversation. We need to get those ideas so that we can actually have fair conversations and fair discussions. And building on one another's ideas is actually most productive, because if you hear something and you think maybe it's just missing a little tweak here or there, building on other ideas is a really important part of this process. So, this agency is pretty busy. 543,000 new licensees since 2016. 1,794 licensees per FTE. We refer to this as our dashboard, just to give you some quick numbers and stats on how we do our business. 18 newer transferred programs since 2016. Very busy. Something that I know our executive office is extremely proud of. The cumulative savings in millions of dollars back to our licensees. Back from 2010 to 2018, it's been $20 million that we've saved our licensees. I know they're pretty proud of that. And if it's you think it's something that happens to other agencies, you might want to look around, because it's very difficult to lower those fees. But it's important that you pay attention to this stuff. If you think we're not charging the right fees, we need to hear that. You need to tell us. You need to let us know. And these are the kind of forums that we do those kind of things. Complaints, 150 days. I'm proudly serving currently 840,000 licensees total. Yeah, so show of hands, everybody that's already downloaded the Poll Everywhere app, please. This is very important. I like it. This is what I want to see. This is awesome. It doesn't mean we can't help you if you don't have your phone with you. If you want to give your input, we actually have another slide that I can show you. Bar Summit input. We've set up an email so that if you decide you don't have any ideas today, you need to think about it some. We're going to be accepting y'all's input later on at the Bar Summit email that I had up there earlier. I'll make sure and get that to you. We do want your feedback. If we can't get it all today, there it is. barsummit@tdlr.texas.gov. So you want to put your ideas down in print. You want to send an email to us with your ideas. You can send it to that particular address. That's what we want to do. All right, so we're going to test the Poll Everywhere app. This is your opportunity to play on your phones. We're actually encouraging you to look at your phones instead of us. What you should see on your phone now, once she activates this, which I think it's activated now, is this little map. We want to know how far you came to get here today. We want to know what kind of representation. Look at that. Who's farther? Who's farther? We got somebody. This is Barbara's doing technology. That's right.
Is anybody not seeing the map?
Again, this is just a test. So Central Texas, easy for you guys to get here. There's no Austin traffic to worry about. Y'all had an easy ride here this morning, I'm sure. But we got people up here from the Wichita Falls area. I know there's some storms out that way last night, out towards the Dallas area. All the way from the valleys represented. Is that what people need to see? pollev.com/TDLR1995. Yes. The login? These were planned activities. We know it's going to take a little bit of time to get hooked up. Once we're hooked up, it should work pretty smoothly. This is the Wi-Fi username and the Wi-Fi password. separate there? All right, so this is for the Poll Everywhere app. This is for the Wi-Fi access. Typically, you want to get to your Wi-Fi first so that you can have access to the outside and it work as quickly as you'd like. Once you get to your Wi-Fi access, you would want to get to your Poll Everywhere app. All right? For those of y'all listening at home, the same instructions apply. Hopefully y'all can see this screen. If our technician in the back could please bring up the screen. This is just Wi-Fi. You should have your own home Wi-Fi if you're at home. You're just interested in getting on to Poll Everywhere as we go through the questions. Ms. Colleen, if you wouldn't mind bringing up the next slide for testing purposes. So y'all did real good. This is great. This is what we want to see. All right, so here's another test for y'all. How are y'all feeling today? Thumbs up, thumbs down, smiles on your face. I'm liking the green. This is what we would like to see. I'm even okay with why the heck are we here? Hey, but no judgments, no judgments. If that's how you're feeling, if you're confused, if we haven't done a good enough job explaining things, we need to see this. pollev.com. Lady was asking pollev.com/TDLR1995. This is called crowdsourcing. You can imagine trying to gather everybody's input at once. Typically, we'll put out administrative rules, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that people are going to actually be sending us input. When we get y'all all in a room and y'all start talking to each other, that's when the ideas start to flow, and that's where crowdsourcing comes into play. You see somebody else's idea, and you start to build on it. So that's why we're doing this exercise. Looking good, looking good. I think we're good. Turning it over to Mr. Eric Beverly.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? My name is Eric Beverly. I'm Government Relations here at TDLR, and with me is Colleen Tran.
Good morning.
So we were just going to touch briefly on changes that happened during the 86th legislative session. The change that happened for the cosmetologist statute was that this line, subsection A, used to be 1,500 hours of instruction at a beauty culture school, and that was changed to 1,000. And so, as Brian laid out, as he mentioned, there was no specific statutory change for the barbering profession, but given this change, we wanted to provide an opportunity for your profession to consider whether or not you want to make a change. And so that's what the discussion is about today.
Just a little background. The hours for barber hours are not actually in law. That's why you have a choice. We can deal. It's done by rule for the barbering program. So that's why we're here today to have a conversation, because it would be upon your industry and your advisory board to make that decision instead of, because this one was done statutorily.
Introduce yourself, Colleen.
Oh, Eric did. Colleen Tran. I'm Assistant General Counsel for the barber and cosmetology programs. So, I think we're good. Do we have any other questions before we begin? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a question about what you said. Why is cosmetology law and barber is rule?
That is the way the legislature has drafted it. That's the way the laws were developed, and not something that we had any influence on. As the legislature chose to put the cosmetology hours in law, maybe they did not choose to or did not match them up. I don't know the answer to that.
So, good morning. Ray Pizarro, Director for the Education Examination Division. The hours. Barber and cause. So think about it this way with barber. Those 1,500 hours, those are the minimum standards, right? The department has never mandated or predict or ask you to say this is how you're going to teach, Brandon, at your school, right? But we give you those standards to say here's where you need to be as a minimum. So just keep that in mind when you're making your comments. We're not suggesting, oh, you got to change your curriculum. You got to change how you teach in your school. We're not saying that at all. If you all decide to make any movement on the general minimum standards, that would go into rule, and you'll hear that later. There'll be drafted rules. Here, if you guys want to make a change, then we'll go through the rulemaking process, then we'll change the standards in the rule. And what does that mean to you? That just means you have to do those minimum standards. So for example, let's just say if I had a 1,500-hour program and you guys do make a change, that means, well, maybe I won't show that PowerPoint anymore for the haircutting part. Or maybe I won't have the guest speaker come in for that part. Doesn't mean you change how you teach. So I just want to make that clear so you all understand it's not about changing your curriculum, it's about changing the minimum standards for the barbering. That's what were the technical standards.
Does anybody have any questions about statutory things still? Because if not, we'll move on. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to understand better the difference of a rule and then the law, because I'm not really clear on it.
So the law is set by the legislature. So those are your chapter 1601, 1602, and 1603. And from there, in the law, it says for some of the programs, for example, exactly how you implement that law or a policy is done by rule. So in the cosmetology law, it tells you the exact number of hours it needs to look like. But in the barber rule, it says that we need to set the minimum standards by rule. So it's something that we can do as an agency level versus that's done at the statutory level during session.
Any other questions before we get started on the actual presentation and why we're here today? All right. Can I get you at the board, Ms. Colleen? Thank you.
One more time so everybody sees that.
pollev.com/TDLR1995. This is how we're going to be taking y'all's input. All right, so here's the current 1,500-hour curriculum standards.
We have additional paper copies if anybody does not have a copy of it.
Everybody have their hard copy in hand. You can be looking those over. We want you to be reading and reviewing those. It may have been a while since you looked at those. And then there's the 1,000-hour that's next to it. What are your thoughts on the 1,000-hour change to cosmetology? Remember, we're talking about cosmetology. What effect, what thoughts do you have about what that would do to y'all's industry and what it's going to do? So I'm hearing it's ridiculous. Let me qualify up front. This is live streaming. And so everybody can see your comments. We try to keep it kind of clean, kind of friendly here. So if you could limit the expletives and the additional language, it would be very good. It's a very good thing. We do want to hear your feedback. We want you to be direct with us, but make sure to watch the expletives and the language. So it's ridiculous. You know what? You probably got some people that feel that way, especially if they're not understanding what was intended by the statutory change. I can appreciate that. It's good for the industry. Somebody's on board with what the idea is. They have way too much knowledge to learn in so little time. I think Cosmos needed all that 1,500. Not great for the industry. Dangerous for the public. It is a must so barber schools do not die. Wow. Tragic, students don't feel ready after 1,000 hours. Quality of education will be lowered and diluted. Bad for Cosmos schools. Is less learning a positive? With the question mark. They don't have the answers. We don't have the answers. That's why we're here asking questions or getting you to give us your input. Is less learning a positive? Not good for the industry. Indifferent. Not sure till we figure it out. Scary for students. Change is scary. We have a potential change. Nothing required of y'all at this time, but we're looking at things. Not enough time to thoroughly educate on all aspects. It degrades the careers and academic standing of those that came before. Good idea. It will help with the dropout rate. Now we should have more students graduate in a timely fashion, which means more professionals in the industry. Definitely not enough time. It keeps a balance between cosmetology and barber schools. I feel some students will not be totally ready for the real world. These are your peers. These are people from outside that are actually bringing up these comments. Yes, sir.
Sounds like we should have had this type of a meeting before the cosmetology rules changed.
So the gentleman said we should have had this type of a meeting before the cosmetology rules changed. The cosmetology rules have not changed. The law has changed. And so your opportunity to talk with people about these things is when the legislation is in session and when they're discussing the laws that are going to affect the state and your industry. That's when you have the time and the opportunity to provide input to the legislators that are passing the laws. So now we're at a point that the law has been passed, that ship has sailed for cosmetology, and we're just exploring this for barber. What is that effect in cosmetology going to have on barbers? Do we need to do anything? Because there wasn't a statutory change for barbers that made this happen. Now that there has been a cosmetology change, you've got to think about what it could do. Does that make sense? Any other questions related to that? This is something that we deal with regularly because we have 39 programs, but I do not expect that every individual out there, if this gentleman has the question, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands of people out that are doing their job, they're busy working, and they don't have time to go to the legislature. They may not know who their representative is, but that's when you get the input. When the laws are being made, you have to make that contact. You have to make it known when they provide public comment for the laws being made. Let's get back to some more of these comments. It's not a good change. You are worried about safety. This will not be helpful. Health and sanitation must remain a top priority. I'm going to move them down. Okay, thank you. Yeah, because we missed some. Not enough practice. Hard to remove 1/3 of a program. Less education leads to even more insecure graduates. Larger companies will love to pay them even less. Not good for the fellow man. 1,500 hours are not enough. If y'all have questions as we go through these comments, remember we're trying to build on ideas. Raise your hand and we can bring you a microphone. Yes, sir.
So I do have a question. What is the statute creation process? So let's say if there is a change decided upon, what are the steps that you guys take and how are we actually involved in that? Do we actually see it or does that just happen behind closed doors?
Do you want to try?
So one of the things that we do, you know, the Texas legislature meets for about 140 days every 2 years, and they meet in an odd-numbered year beginning in January. And so what we do on our website, that's okay. That's fine, Colleen. So we put out every bill that is going to impact any of our programs. Should be down. During the legislative session, we feature that link, and it's usually at the top of the page. But we also maintain this site, TDLR-related bills. And so this is a listing of every bill that affects the agency, and it's organized by program. And so it's there as a resource for you during session as the bills are moving through the process. As a state agency, we are actually required to post this on our website, and so we do that for our various industries. And if you click on, like, if you go down to Barber Bill 2698, that will link you directly out to the bill itself during session. Of course, session's over, right? The legislature's gone home. But during session, this enables you to keep up with bills that are affecting your agency, and you will be able to figure out when an upcoming committee meeting is coming, and that would be an opportunity for you to testify during session if you so desired, or to provide input. Is that helpful?
But that's statute, not law.
Statute and law are the same. It's what the agency has control over is rulemaking. So when the legislature passes a law, they will give our commission the ability to adopt rules. And so that's something that we do after the bill has passed and after we've had the opportunity for public comment, which is part of what we're doing today. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lily Benitez. I'm the director of Bladecraft Barber Academy in Dallas, Texas. The question that we're trying to ask, I guess, a little bit more clarity is, how is the statute passed? So we're having this conversation today, we're voting on it, or taking a poll on it. What is the actual process of it happening and being activated?
Okay. Yes. Yes. So the process for barbering is a rule process because we already have based on our statutory authority, we already have the flexibility to change the rules if the industry desires. So the lawmaking process is that a member of the House or Senate drafts and introduces a bill, and they submit that, and it goes through the legislative process. So it's heard on the House, it's read on the House floor, it goes to committee in either the House or the Senate. If it gets out of committee, then it's debated again on the House or Senate floor, and it has to happen on both sides. And then both chambers have to agree on what the bill should be, and then that bill goes to the governor, and it's either signed or allowed to pass into law or vetoed.
And so that was how the cosmetology law happened. But
Absolutely.
barbering is ruled by rules and statutes, which the advisory council is who would decide that, correct?
Right, and the difference is that the number of hours for cosmetologists is put in statute. So as an agency and as an industry, you don't have discretion about it. The legislature has said it's going to be 1,000 hours.
Right, for cosmetology.
Right, but for barbering,
we
it's in
decide.
rule. That's exactly right.
And so what I would like to know is the exact process that happens.
Okay, for rulemaking.
Yes.
Yes. So today we're hosting a summit, which is actually not required by law, but we wanted to give y'all an extra opportunity for input on your profession. So what will happen is we will have a advisory board meeting, which I believe is November 4th. November 4th. That is when proposed rules, based on input from today, will be presented to the advisory board, the barbering advisory board, for the first time. They will consider those. There will be an opportunity for public comment. They will consider those. There will be an opportunity for public comment. If the advisory board makes the recommendation, those rules will go out for public comment in the Texas Register. It's a 30-day period. Those rules will then come back to the advisory board, and the advisory board and staff will prepare and explain all the comments that we have received through the rulemaking process, and there will be another opportunity for public input at that advisory board meeting.
Okay.
So if the advisory board decides to move forward with those rules, those will then go to our commission, the Texas Commission of Licensing and Regulation. Again, there will be another opportunity for public input. There's a public comment during each commission meeting, and if the commission decides to move forward with the advisory board's recommendations, it will then go out to the Texas Register again for additional public comment. And then it will come back to the commission after 30 days. They will review that comment, and then it will go out for a final posting on the Texas Register. So we are at the very, very beginning of the process. And at TDLR, we really value your input. So we wanted to, and we know that this is potentially a big change for your industry. And so we wanted to provide this extra step so that we could hear from you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Mary Winston, TDLR. That's typically what I say when we start an advisory board meeting. So I'm one of the attorneys here, and one of my duties is I'm the attorney for the advisory boards. We currently do have 31, soon to be 32, and other action going on. About 256 board members. We have Chair Jemison here. Thank y'all for coming. As you can probably tell, we've had a lot of staff time spent on what's going on, right? So, and it gets confusing because we do this stuff all the time. So we talk about, oh, there's a rule, there's a statute. Y'all are working. So we try our best to set it on a Monday when most of you aren't working. But a statute means, frankly, there's no wiggle room. That's the law, right? So very good questions about how did that happen? So that happens above our heads. We don't have input, or they may call and ask us a question and we answer the question. but that's all we can do. As a state agency, we do not lobby. We do not say we want this or that. We say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. They say this is the law. That's what happened to cosmetology. That's what happened to cosmetology. So it went from, in the sweep of a pen, at our legislative level, from 1,500 hours to 1,000. And now the wiggle room that COS has, which we'll talk to them later on today, how do we get everything into that 1,000 hours? Okay, how does this affect barbering? Barbers, you have a little bit, actually have a lot more wiggle room, but you also have the knowledge of what affects cosmetology is gonna affect y'all. The schools, we have comments coming back and forth. It's gonna affect you. So we wanted to, let's have a summit. Why are we having a summit? We can put out emails all day. We can ask questions all day. We can bother the crap out of Chair Jemison and the board, but we want to hear from y'all. So this is, and I'm sorry I keep saying y'all. I'm a Louisiana, Texas girl, and I'm just going y'all, y'all, y'all. You wonderful licensees and professionals. So sorry about that. So we want your comments, and as Eric explained so well, the process, so it's like not gonna happen tomorrow, right? So this is the first step. It's a step that we're not required to take, but we're allowed to take, and with so many licensees, it is just good common sense to take to ask, what do the professionals think is the best for them? So with those kind of parameters in place, cosmetology, by law, it's going to 1,000 hours. Barbers, you have an option. You're at 1,500 hours. Do you want to change that? How do you want to change that? And we have brought you here today. Thank you for coming to figure that out, to help us figure that out. And as David said earlier, we're going to have that email open, so when you leave, if you think, dang it, I wanted to say that, send us an email. And we want to get that in so we can kind of tabulate all the results of how that's going.
We have a question. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jonathan Quinones out of Crossroads Barber Academy in Victoria, Texas. Don't worry about the y'all. That's a pronoun here. My question is, how many cosmetology schools are transferring their licenses over to barbering? Is that something we're keeping track of yet? Because now that their hours have diluted to 1,000, they're looking to expand.
That's one of the questions. We don't have good, it takes a while to get data for that kind of thing, but that's going to be something that, just commonsensically is going to be an issue or a concern or something that's going to change. Do we have that up? So we can just we don't have all of those numbers yet because it's too new. And we haven't yet changed the rules to, we have a little time. They changed the law, and they give us a certain amount of time to change the rules. So, hey, TDLR, this is what your licensees have to do. Now, because you're the regulators, you got to make this work. So we're in that process of seeing how we can make that work. But your concern is one of the concerns that we as non-professionals, y'all are the professionals and the experts, so you know how that's going to affect it. That's one of the questions we kind of wanted to get out. Now, we have a question right here.
Hang on.
And right here. Because I do want to get into how it's currently looking. How many of you all did a curriculum in high school, for high school barber? So the majority did not. Okay, that'll help me as we move forward with the hours. Okay, questions?
I'm sorry. I guess my question is, by law, cosmetology has been changed to 1,000 hours, right?
Yes.
So today, everybody in here is talking about barbering. They're currently at 1,500 hours. And should they change from 1,500 to lower? Is that what we're doing?
That's what we're discussing today. Yes.
Okay.
Taking your input on the matter, not making the change, not voting today, starting the process for input because we want to have y'all's input. We had some questions over here as well.
I'm sorry, she has another
I'm
question.
so sorry.
So I don't see where, as a barber school, they even have a choice. I mean, they don't have a choice. Because if you have cosmetology at 1,000 hours, okay, so as a person looking to enroll into a school, I can choose to go to cosmetology, do 1,000 hours. I can do a barber crossover program for 300 hours. That's 1,300 hours. Why would I go to barbering for 1,500 hours? So they're gonna have to, as a barber school, they're gonna have to drop their hours to 1,000 as well, right?
And ma'am, what's your first name?
It's Manuela.
Manuela. Thank you. What you just said is really the concern. So we can sit up here in our offices and say, well, duh, everybody's going to have to change and this and that. Okay, that's my opinion. I'm not a barber. So what do you want to do? What you're saying is kind of how we want this conversation to start. How is it going to go? That is a cosmetology law that changed, but it's going to affect you. And before I come back to you, because you have fantastic questions, I think we had some more over here. Do we have somebody right here?
Hi, my name is Andrea Lathan. I'm at Barbering Institute. I'm an instructor at Barbering Institute of Texas of Longview. My first question is, are the 300 hours crossover, is it a rule or is it a law? For
that is the law.
Okay. With that being said, I have dealt with several crossovers, and for them to go down, they done it. But I think they need more hours. 1,500 hours for a barber as an instructor, we cramming a lot in the individuals, and some people haven't been in school in years, and so they trying to get back in the swing of things. But at the same time, I'm looking at dealing with grown people, and in the industry, it's like some of the Texans was saying that some people are scared about they didn't have enough training even in the 1,500 hours that's given, theory and on the floor. You know, because I have a lot of students that come back after the 1,500 hours. They'll get the exam part and we knock it out. But after the 1,500 hours, they come back and ask me to retrain them in practicals before they go take their practicals.
Okay, I want to also, this is information from the field. Thank you, from people out there. I want to clarify as well. A couple of people have talked about the crossover and the 1,300. So we have a model to look at today that goes to the 1,000 hours. It's something we have thought up in our brains up in here. But out there, what works for you, and listening to, okay, 1,300, what if they do the crossover? There's nothing to stop you from doing 1,300 hours. You have more wiggle room, and you don't have to decide today. But if, like I said, if you have a thought, and then you have another thought, because I kind of think our executive director was talking about, this is how the conversation starts, and one person leads to another person and another thought, and we're going to keep that open, that email, so you can, heck, call us, but email us is better because we know exactly what you meant to say. You're not locked into the 1,000. You're not locked in at all. It's just the decisions that you make, how that's going to affect barber schools in relation to, hey, what if they do that crossover and just jump in? So those are kind of the things that we want to talk about. And not tomorrow. It's not going to happen. It's September, I think, 2020 that the changes would occur. So you have some time.
Hang on a second. Okay. My name's Lee Parham. I'm the Deputy Director of Regulatory Program Management. And we have been working with you all since 2005. It's been a wonderful working relationship. I had beautiful, long, flowing hair before the barbers and cosmetologists came here. However, this is what we need. Okay, this is what we need to possibly develop a rule. We're turning it over to y'all to give us your best. I mean, dig deep on this because it's going to affect your industry. And there are also different ways that you can maybe free up the instructors a little bit. So just take everything into consideration, when you're giving us your input.
So we've run a little bit over on time, and we need to get to the materials. I know that there's still questions out there, and I want to get to those questions. I'm going to move to the next slide.
Can I get this nice lady who has sat there for so long, and she has my mic, David. But
Thank you.
And I'm sorry because you've been so.
I've been so patient. My name is Diana Shipley. I'm from Vernon College, and we have two campuses, one in Vernon and one in Wichita Falls. Wichita Falls has an Air Force base, and we are right on the Oklahoma border. So we have several students that come from Oklahoma, and then the Wichita Falls Air Force Base, we have students from there. So I wonder how this will affect reciprocity.
That's a very good question. Everybody in the audience and at home should be thinking about that. That's why y'all are here. We don't have all the answers. The questions y'all raise are things that we may have thought of and maybe have included in our presentation. We may not have thought of the things that y'all can think of. That's why we're here today. So very good. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you for speaking up and making sure you got your point across, because those are important points. We need to hear y'all. More ideas that we're asking from you. How will the new 1,000-hour cosmetology requirement affect the barbering industry? You heard some of the conversation. One of the most poignant. If it's 1,000 hours and you can do a 300 crossover, what does the 1,500 hours for barbering mean? That's significant. That's what's running through our head. But y'all have choices. Y'all have an advisory board that's going to be listening to y'all's input. We have work groups that we can assign the work to as part of the advisory group, where it puts it back on us. But really, it's in y'all's hands. This is a public process. Our rulemaking process is a public process, so everybody gets their chance at input. Got a hand over here, and then I'll come back over here with the questions we had.
Cosmetologists are required to have a high school diploma, whereas a barber does not. So if you're going to have a crossover, are you going to require them to have a high school diploma with this change?
That's a good question.
Those are statutory requirements.
It's a statutory requirement. We have to stick with statute.
It's the law. Yes.
Had some questions over here earlier. We want to spur the conversation up there. If your question is related, it would help best. But whatever your question is. Yep. I'm going to go over here first.
We're gonna
Hello,
get you.
My name is John Oldaya, and if we drop to 1,000 hours, will the student be required to complete the 1,000 hours before they take their written test, or will they have to complete 700 hours before they take the written test, or the 1,000 hours, take the written test, pass it, and then do the practical? If they do fail that, if we drop it to 1,000 and they fail that test at that time, they're completed school, you know. So, you know, it just, to me, they're not going to have that help to finish up and pass it without coming back to school. So that was my question. Where would that testing be affected on the time frame?
I don't have answers for that one, but Ray may.
So the answer to, hello? Ray Pizarro. So the answer to your question is 1603. You have 1601, 02, and 03, right? 01 is you guys, 02 is cause, 1603 is both barber and cause. In 1603, it does say you can test early for the written at 900 hours. So that hasn't changed. Whether you guys make a change, let's say you go down to 1,000, it's still going to be 900 hours, because that's in law.
Okay, one more.
Okay, I just want to say we actually have 16 schools, Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arizona. And in our New Mexico schools, our barbering program is 1,200 hours. And my experience has been is most of the men who enroll and go on barber school have been cutting hair their whole life. So I don't think reducing hours to 1,000 hours is a bad thing, because they already know how to do it. I mean, we enroll kids, and first week they're in using clippers and shaving and doing everything else. So I actually think it would be a good thing for both Cosmo and barbers to reduce it.
We're going to go ahead and go to the board, so hold your questions. We'll get back to your questions. I want y'all to see some of the comments that have come from the outside or maybe even from this room. Increase the cosmetology crossover hours to 500 hours. So we talked about statutes and rules. That would take a statutory change to increase it to 500 hours. It's at 300. We're talking about right now what the requirements are in statute. Can you make crossover 500 hours? Barber must change to not become obsolete. You have two sides of the coin, people discussing where we're at because of the law changes that have happened. We're not going to give you all the answers today. We're asking for y'all's questions and input. These ideas are the ones that your peers need to hear so we can get all this feedback. More work for the barbering industry. Not sure if that's because we would take it down to 1,000 hours or if we leave it the way it is. I expect it would be taking it down. It will have a negative effect on the barber industry. If there is a 300-hour crossover, make the barbering class 1,300 hours. If not, make barbering 1,000 hours, just like Cosmo. So these are the ideas that are being floated by your peers up here. And again, our advisory board is listening. We're listening. Everybody out there in the stratosphere that's listening that maybe couldn't travel today, they're seeing your ideas up here, and they're thinking about this. That's what we need.
I'm with her on those 16 schools. And I don't know if you're aware of what's going on around the country, but this is nothing new here. The entire landscape of the beauty industry has changed. What my question to you is, before you make a decision like this, and let me just tell you, they're going to make that decision. It's going to go to 1,000 hours. Because if it doesn't, you're going to have a hard time keeping the doors open. You have to do that.
So y'all are going to make that decision.
Pardon me?
So the advisory
Well, I
board
don't
is
care. I can tell you that I'm on both sides of this
Okay.
fence. We teach barbers and we teach cosmetologists. We do both. And it's stupid, excuse me, to have one higher than the other. It won't work. I can guarantee it won't work. And the other thing you haven't considered is the funding for federal aid. It changes the aspect of how this whole thing works. Now, I happen to have a 1,000-hour program in Arizona. It's called hairstyling. And essentially what they took out is the nails and the cosmetologist, nails and the skin care. And you have 1,000 hours of doing that. Moderately successful, not very successful at all. The kid comes in, wants the whole program, the whole program. Then they changed. They said, I don't want the whole program. I want to go to the 1,000-hour program. So that's what you're going to be dealing with. I've already done with it. New Mexico is quite successful at 1,200 hours. 1,200 hours for barbering, and we have 1,500 hours or 1,600 hours for Cosmos. And we have about 60-40% of each. So when you're thinking about this, if you don't consider the programs around you in different states and what other people have done, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. So all this, whether it's good or it's bad, is irrelevant to me. It's all good if you look at it that way. The glass is half full. So you got to fill it up the rest of the way. You got to work within that 1,000 hours. And if you don't, you're going to lose money.
Now,
I've already done it.
I want us to take, of course, some more questions because I see this gentleman in the red shirt has his hand up. But before we move on, I want to actually discuss the papers that you have in your hand because we need your input on that as well. So the gentleman in the red shirt, your question?
Well, I got a statement. I believe 1,200 hours would be good for barbering. That'll kill the whole thing about the crossover from the cosmetology. 1,300 hours, that'll kill that. 1,000 is fine with me as well. I believe it's enough time. If you, by the way, I'm a licensed barber instructor in the state of Texas. If you schools get your students out the back alley, hanging out. If your teachers start teaching, I'm also a shop owner. And I'm running a barber school at my barbershop. I also have a private business that I recently started this year where I do state board exam preparation. Okay, it's called Barber Builders. And these guys going to school, and they had to come pay me to train them for the state board exam. Okay? If these schools start teaching and develop an efficient system and curriculums and put them to work and get your students hanging out, sitting around doing nothing, where they got something to do every day, all day when they come to school, 1,000 hours is efficient enough for barbering. Now, cosmetology, I'm also a current cosmetology crossover student at Golden Touch Academy. Okay. At cosmetology, to me, there's a little more to it. Even though it's in both books, the styling and all that, most people that sign up for barbering school are not interested in learning the intricacies of the styling and chemical services. If it was up to me, we would take half of that stuff out of barbering, and you won't have to worry about stuffing it all into 1,000 hours. You can have 1,000-hour barbering course. Take the manicuring and some of the chemical services out of the barbering, and you won't have to worry about cramming it down the throats of the students. But number one thing is, even if they went to 1,000 hours with the current curriculums, the school owners don't have to change the tuition. You base a certain dollar amount per hour. You keep the same tuition you got right now. The dollar amount an hour would just go up. Because if you're going to get the same education, you're just going to figure out an efficient way to do it in 1,000 hours. For you to say your students ain't ready now. They're not ready on the 1,500. Y'all letting them out of there not ready. Because you're not teaching nothing.
So right here, thank you for your passion.
We're not.
Thank you so much.
No judgments. No judgments here.
No,
I appreciate the candid comments. Remember, we're all trying to get everybody's idea. Definitely appreciate the input. People are going to be passionate about these ideas. They're going to be passionate about one way or the other. This is the information gathering process. Remember, you've got a long way to go to give input to our advisory board, to our commission on whether or not anything happens. But I'm liking the ideas.
Oh yeah, I want to hit the brainstorming. Thank you. The brainstorming rules. I heard some snaps and clicks, and I heard some sighs, and so all of that's good. I don't think we can capture all that, but it gives us the flavor of the room. So brainstorming rules. All ideas will be recorded. Whoever said something is stupid, please write up there. Or if you want to say it a nicer way or not, say how you feel. We want to know what you, as the professionals, want us to know, right? So all ideas are recorded. No idea is ridiculous. None. Whatever you think. No judgments. We will have some, okay, that's fine. But we're not judging. We're either in your amen corner or saying, I can't believe he said that. But whichever one it is, that's fine. That's why we're here. Build on one another's ideas, which I think we've already been doing, and generate as many ideas as possible. So from that impassioned plea, I wanted to just kind of update all of that.
I want to touch on one thing, David, real quick. Okay, so as we were discussing and putting together this summit, the federal funding did come up. Okay. Now, we don't have an answer right now, but at least we're thinking on the same level, and that's why we need y'all's input.
I'm going to go back to something that Chairman Jemison brought up at the very beginning of the meeting. He's happy to see everybody out here. A show of hands, how many people are signed on to our email subscriber list, the one that gets you the notifications for rules? So this is how we get the information out. When we're going to have a rule proposal, when this comes up, if it comes up, y'all need to be signed on to that so y'all can give us y'all's input. It can't just happen one time. It can't just happen every couple of years. This is y'all's industry. We need y'all's input to make decisions on this and to guide the program. So this is all that's quite a few comments that we received while we were doing these discussions here. Does it tell you how many? So 42 up here on the screen. Again, I expect there's people out there that want to put their stuff down in writing and send it to us as an attachment. We got an email address you're going to be able to send that to. We do need that input. Let's go ahead and get on to the next slide so that we can talk a little bit more detail. Miss Mary mentioned it before. We gave y'all some papers in y'all's hands so y'all could be studying and looking at those things. They have this in their hand, right?
Do you have this in the handout?
Yes. It just looks
Model A.
Without the color, but yes, the other one, yes. There you go. And we're calling this Model A, and we say Model A as if there's a Model B. There is no Model B. There's just
Y'all may
it's-
help us to develop a Model B, a
Exactly.
Model C. We're just putting something out there so y'all can throw darts at it. So y'all can
it's-
say we don't
it's our
like
first
it or
attempt.
thumbs up. We're
So let me add a little flesh to this. What you're looking at, this Model A you're looking at, our work group from the advisory board started this process. We started this process 3 years ago, I believe, because what was happening is a lot of these terminologies that are currently in rule for the standards of the 1,500 hour and the 1,000 hour, they're antiquated. So they stepped up and say, hey, let's freshen up our rules, let's freshen up the terminologies on what we're using. And then lo and behold, here comes a 1,000 hour change on cause. And so now they jumped up and said, wait a minute, we'll still freshen up the terminology, but now let's take a stab at what this would look like if we were to reduce the hours like the other side did. So that's where this Model A came from. This is not set, this is not done by the department, this is done in conjunction with our advisory board members who are part of the work group. So here's a starting point, if you will, a draft. Do you agree with this? I mean, look at it closely with what's currently out there. Again, this is the standard. This is a technical standard on what a school must minimally teach. Do I want to spend 10 hours in CPR or safety? Do I need to spend, we don't prescribe those. Remember, we took away those practical applications. We didn't want it reported to us, right? We wanted you guys to keep it because you are the expert. You'll know that some of your students may need 50 hours in haircutting longer than this other person because they're a little bit more savvy. So you have that leeway in teaching and creating your curriculum, but based on the standards. So I've heard that, the gentleman over here, he's saying it's 1,200 hours in one state. It should go down to 1,000. Well, the question is, where do you guys are going to be comfortable? The gentleman in the red said the same thing. This is all about how you are going to teach your student. And can you make all of those topics in here? So look at this very carefully and then provide your comments to us about Model A. They may be a Model B. Maybe you guys see some stuff here that says, you know what, I like most of this, but can you do this, this, and this? And that's where you guys come in to provide us input like the advisory board work group did.
In the papers you have in your hand, there is terminology that is utilized. Words mean something. So if you see the word sanitation, if you see the word hair cutting and you want to say, yes, that definitely needs to be in the basics, and we need to reflect that in our curriculums, if you see a word missing, add it. This is what this opportunity is for. I'm seeing it right now. Will the instructor hours be changing? More hours shaving, less hours dressing the hair. These are things that we need to be asking ourselves or including or thinking about, because Model A, advisory board work group did their part, putting some ideas out there. We need to hear y'all's feedback. The updated terminology is long overdue. That's what we heard as well. We've been working on the project for a few years now because it's been around for a while. Things change. 400 hours for hair cutting and 300 hours for facial shaving, 150 for facial massage, 150 for dyes and tints. That's 1,000 hours. Somebody's got the plan. They're just waiting for somebody to vote. Just put it up for a vote, right? Agree with the updated terminology. So someone likes what our advisory board group put together. That's okay. We can take the feedback. Can you blow it up just a little bit for us, Ms. Colleen? You can. You can use the screen to blow it up.
Sorry.
There you go. Now we may lose some of the edges of the sentences where we have to scroll, but
Did that get bigger? Oh, okay. Sorry.
less hours is unacceptable. Need more time on law and rules, needs to mirror the Cosmo law and rules, time 75 to 100 on new proposals. Updated terminology is great. Shaving should stay at 5 hours, reduce the barber law 5 hours. Scientific fundamentals is important, helps give a deeper understanding of what we're doing and why. So I like that one. What does scientific fundamentals mean to you? We may need some more detail. We got to get some meat if we're going to include it in a curriculum. What does it mean to you? We need to keep the histology and scientific fundamentals. Barbers are not interested in weaving and manicure and pedicure. And some may have the same opinion on that. Some may have a different opinion if they have a different business model.
So we're getting some great comments. So let me give you sort of a visual here. We're going to take all these comments back, and we're going to, guess what? We're going to go to the work group and go, hey, guys, did you hear your peers yesterday or whenever that would be 3 weeks ago? Let's go down and let's look at all of these comments and how do we make those changes and incorporate and improve this Model A. So if you have an idea, be specific. If you just say, I don't like it, they're going to go, well, that's not a good enough comment for us to make a change. So actually tell us, 10 hours or 200 hours on this particular topic, that kind of thing. You notice how we separated, or how they separated, the theory from practical, which I thought that was a pretty good idea. They made that separation, guiding those new schools on how to create their curriculum when they do create it. It gives some flexibility to the school to do that. So be very prescriptive on your comments that you're providing.
Okay, one comment here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Quentin Richardson. I'm a barber in Houston, and I work currently with Houston Community College. I've also worked with PSI as a rater and proctor for many years. I recently left that position to go back into education because I would see some of the trends, and I recognize Ray and Rebecca, a few other people. Real quick, what we're looking at is what's called market disruption, okay? Some of us have used market disruption, not really know what it is. Uber, I just checked in my hotel last night with a key on my phone. I never thought I could do that. You just press a button and unlock your door. You don't even have to go to the counter. What that means is there are pros and cons to this. Some of these states, Alabama just recently, maybe 6 years ago, just started to regulate barbering. And you didn't even have to have a license to do it. And that change is only 6 years old. So I'm sure that there have been many nuances when they went to incorporating regulation to a state that never did it before. So market disruption is technology, okay? Right now, we are learning faster. We're getting our groceries delivered to us, and education is currently being disrupted by way of technology through distant learning or distant education. You can basically go to class on your phone, right? And if you can do that for some of these other programs or disciplines, why not do it for barbering and cosmetology? Spending less time in the classroom is an antiquated way of learning. As Ray just said, mouth to ear learning, people's attention span is not that long anymore. What is it calculated at 16 seconds? They did that at Americans abroad. We have 16 seconds before we get flustered by somebody giving us what we want. And most of the time it's education. These students, they go to YouTube. You can sit in class all day long. They'll go to YouTube and come back to class and challenge you on it. Okay? Because it appeals to their style of learning.
So let's try to get it back to the point over
Okay.
here, all right? I like what
Okay.
you're sharing with us.
Well, I'll close out. Just basically, don't be too negative about the change, because us as instructors or us as barbers is only going to increase our bottom line. You have 6 months versus 12 months for a program, so you can double your revenue. Same with the students. They have a higher return on their investment, their ROI. They're invested in their careers. Instead of taking them 12 months, they can get out in the industry in 6 months. We do not make the best barbers or the best cosmetologists from our school. What we do is teach them a way to give these services to the general public in a way that's not going to get them sued. That's what we do. Over time, you get better. And as far as my last point is, what's going to create a better student is their level of commitment. This program can go down to 750 hours. They're not going to get serious until hour 745 and cram it all in and hope that they go and pass at a minimal competency rate. So it's us as individuals to make sure that we plant that seed of interest there and we get them to dial in and to buy into our program and what it is that we're doing. Thank you for your time. Hey, Mr. Brown.
I'll get you next.
So this lady first, and then this gentleman over here.
Hello. So what months are we looking at to regulate for both the Cosmo and the Barber?
what, months?
Yeah, so for the Cosmo, since it's already become a law, when are we looking to changing the 1,000 hours? And for the barber, when are they looking, if it gets changed, when are we looking at to get changed over?
This is David Gonzalez. So Eric went into that process. It takes a little bit of time. Remember, we didn't have to do this process. Right. We're trying to get ahead of the game. This is extra time, extra input. He's got it.
So the change for cosmetology applies to somebody when they submit their application to be a cosmetology operator on or after September 1 of 2020. Right, so there's plenty of lead time. So because this is a change that y'all can make, it doesn't necessarily have to be that time frame, but it could be helpful to follow a similar time frame in terms of efficiency for us as an agency and for less confusion between the industries. So that's something to consider and certainly something that you can weigh in on during the rulemaking process.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Devin Dixon. I am neither a instructor or a school owner. I'm a licensed barber working in a shop. And then on this paper it says standard. And if we forget about standard by lowering these hours, you're sending out a crop of professionals that's not professional. They're sending out crappy quality. There's no quality. There's no preparation. You understand? And I just want to use this anecdote. I was in the military. They started allowing to recruit special forces straight out of high school. It hurt our teams because they weren't prepared for what was going to happen. And this is going to be the same thing with this barbering program. We keep saying barber, Cosmo. I understand they're entwined a little bit, but there's too much history in this that I've learned from the two schools that I went to that instilled the history of this program and the quality that's supposed to come with it. And if we don't keep to that, we fail in the clients.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I have more of a regulatory or compliance question in that whether it's barber or cosmetology, are we going to be able to submit our applications in order to get it to our accreditor on time for the new change to take place?
I'm sorry, to the creditor?
Yeah, so for like
the accreditation
yes,
body.
thank you.
So I'm not sure when the accreditation occurs for your particular.
So we've been in contact with the Veterans Commission, the accreditors, Department of Education. They know what's going on, and we've told them we need to make rule changes. We need to make changes for cause and get that set. We need to talk to you guys on barbering. So I know they want to say, well, when, what's going to happen? Well, it'll happen when we decide it's going to happen. So they're on notice, and they do know that this is a conversation and it's happening. The question is when. And as Eric said, for cause, it is September 1, 2020. But that doesn't mean if you guys decide to make a change or not, it's irrelevant. It's nothing to do with cause. The reason we keep bringing up cause is because how it's going to affect barbering. I heard some folks sit up here, let's change that crossover to 500. If you all recall, that crossover, why is it at 300? Does anybody know? That's the shaving part, right? That's the difference of you guys versus cause, is shaving. You guys need to know how to shave, right? Anyone in this industry. That's the 300 hours. That's the critical part of barber, is that shaving. So when you're looking at this model, make sure we are on point, and if not, if the work group is not, then we need to speak up. So, there's both sides. There's a little bit of everything going on. Yeah, should we leave it at 1,500? Should we change it? Just remember, and I think I've seen some of you guys at the strategic initiatives when we go around the state, we're always asking you, hey, don't stay in the status quo. Look what happened to the cab drivers. Oh, we're not changing. Here comes Uber, and they take all their business away, right? Somebody mentioned, oh, they're learning from the phone. A lot of you have a brick and mortar. You need to make a stand for your industry, right? And so we are having this open discussion, not because we want it. We're seeing an opportunity here. Hey, is something going to happen to our lovely barbers? What's going to happen to their industry? I'd rather bring it to your attention than not, and something happens to your industry, and then I don't want you guys coming back, oh, Ray never told me. Well, right, we're having the conversation now. What do we need to do? Do we need to do anything, or do we need to stay the way we are?
And just remember, the crossover is law.
Yeah.
It's in statute.
I want to pull us back, and we have more questions, and we have time. And if we don't get to it, we really want your questions. Send the email. Keep commenting. We need your help. That help is on this model that the work group has come up with. See, currently we have a theory and practical work model. Our model A, which I scratched out A because it's just like our only model, but we're looking for B, C, or whatever that you come up with, goes now basic, practice, and business, right? So we've just changed the model. We just have hours beside it, and we're looking for basic. You have the list of things that's covered, right? We have 150 hours. So we're going to start there because I want more, wonderful comments, but we need your help here or your input because we want to do
The
this
detail.
as best that we can. So how do you feel about the number of hours for the basic? We have them at 150. We have going from anatomy and physiology through history of barbering. That's all we have at this point. Does someone have some detail that they want for the basic for this model?
Okay, on sterilization and sanitation, for the written exam for Cosmo, there's about 28% of the test on that. So what is it for barbers? 25? That should be increased.
But let me clarify something. This standard has nothing to do with the exam. Okay, let's separate those, because we're talking about how the standards on what you need to teach at a minimum. The assessment that TDLR does, that we use our exam, remains intact. We're still going to assess them in the same way. They still got to be, as the gentleman over here say, we don't want non-professionals. Those standards will remain. You need to know these things in order to be a barber, a successful barber, both in the written and the practical examination. So let's not confuse that. We're not talking about changing the exam here at all. It's about, if we lower the technical standards in your barbering rules, where would that number be? Where do we need to go? Do we need to say, look at the basic, instead of 150 hours for all of those basic needs? Do you want to separate sterilization and sanitation? Yes. If that's the case, well, let's separate it. And how many hours would you minimally dedicate that in your standards? Do you want to put a number on all of these basic parts, or do you want to have a pot of hours to say, I'm going to create my curriculum on how I want it to be, and I have 150 hours, I'm using this as an example, to play with all of those topics on how I teach it? Or do I want the department to tell me, no, you're going to do 60 hours of sterilization and sanitation? Now you're stuck, right? Now you have to do a minimum of 60 hours of sterilization and sanitation. So what is it that you want? Do you want us to tell you, or do you want it to leave it more broad? And I think what you're looking at here is these are some of the things that advisory board members and the work group have come up with and faced. They were looking at, well, I don't know if I want the department telling me exactly how I need to teach my students, right? I want to have some standards so that they know I am teaching barbering and not teaching them golf. So when our inspectors go out there, they can say, oh, Mr. Jemison, yeah, let's see your barbering program. Oh, yeah, you are doing what you need to be doing. And he's not going outside of the standards. Again, we're not creating a curriculum today, but we're stating, let's put the bar where it needs to be. If it needs to change, again, we're asking you, because we feel as a department, cause is changing, there's going to be some kind of effect on barbering. What it is, we don't know. It's going to happen. Somebody said the crossover. Oh, I'm just going to go to cosmetology. Why do I need to go to barber? Go to cosmetology, do the crossover, and I'll get your license at 1,300 hours. So then I'll just do that. I'm not going to go to your school, because I'll just go to this school, right? So what other things are going to happen that way that may affect your industry? We don't want your industry to be substandard, or now because of this change in cause, now you guys are down here. That's not what we want. We want to keep the barbering up high, if that, improve the barbering industry, make it stronger with these good ideas that you're coming up with today. So those are the things. Remember, we're going to take all of these ideas and take it back to the work group, and then you'll see if there's if out of these topics and this conversation today, there's a proposed change, then we're going to see that in rule.
For this next very patient young lady over here, thank you.
Okay, I got two things I want to ask a question real fast. One is when you said that the difference between barbering, the crossovers for the razor. So why do they have to take the test twice? The written twice? I'm just wondering. And then my next thing, when you ask about this.
I'm sorry, tell me your first question.
Why, when they become a crossover, they have to go take the written exam twice? They have to take it as a Cosmo. Then they come over the crossover, and they have to go do the written again.
Because remember, they're taking this is one license, this is two licenses, right? So you take an exam to become, let's say, a barber. Now I have my barber Class A license, right? Now I have an epiphany. I say, you know what? I think I want to go get my cosmetology license, operator. So I'm going to go take the crossover. And they take that 300-hour crossover, and they're going to have to take a test for that and obtain that license as an operator. So there's two different things. What the lady over here is suggesting is that when this happens for cause, I'm going to be able to get a barber license at a reduced hours at 13, right? Because cause is now set at 1,000. So I'll take 1,000, get my license. Now I want a barbering license. Oh, I just need to take the crossover, and it's 300. It's not 1,500 anymore. So what incentive do I have to go to a barbering school and enroll in a 1,500-hour program? Those are the thoughts that's going through our heads. And we don't want to create something that's substandard for barbering. We want to keep barbering up here, right? So those are the thoughts going to our heads. Those are some of the conversations we had with the work group. What do we do? What do the industry wants? Do we set this at 1,000? Do the barber want? Those are kind of the things. Again, this is going to be your decision. So I want to make sure that you guys are fully aware, in this summit, we're having this open discussion so that you hear all of the conversations, all of the ideas, and you're fully aware on the intent. Again, this is just a conversation. It'll go to the work group, and if there's any suggested change, it'll go through a rulemaking, and you can still say, you know what, I don't want any of this. We're going to remain the status quo.
So with this right here, you said the standards in the classroom as an instructor. So
You're talking about what's current or what's the proposed, the Model A?
The proposed model.
Okay.
Okay, so you're saying they're going to give me a minimum amount of hours for theory, but I can adjust them as an instructor accordingly to the student?
You can do that today.
Okay.
Today, that's why these are called standards. It's not curriculum. There are other industries that we regulate that we tell them, you are going to teach this and exactly this. If we were to do that, that means everyone here who has a school will be teaching the exact same hours, the exact same thing. Ron wouldn't be different than from Ron Jr. over here. They'll be teaching, 500 hours in haircutting, and he'll be doing 500 hours in haircutting. If we had it that way, but we don't. We have a standard, minimum standard that we will agree, and we're going to be looking at that as inspectors to say, oh, did Ron Brown, is his what he's teaching, is it to the standards of TDLR? And they're going to go, okay, yeah, it is. We've seen his curriculum. Does that make sense? We're not telling you how to teach your curriculum, but we're guiding you on what you need to have. It's same thing in cause. Now there's going to 15 to 1,000. Some of them are thinking, oh my God, I got to change my curriculum. No, you don't. It's going to be shrunk. You're going to do it in less time. You see what I'm getting at? Remember I said earlier, if you had a PowerPoint presentation or a guest speaker, like if you had me for a guest speaker, I talk a lot. Hell, you don't want me in the room, right? Get out. It's taking too long. So we only got 1,000 hours, right? So that's what we're talking about. That's a guide, and this is a standard. So the lady over here was saying, should we separate these and give prescriptive hours to each of these topics? And that's why some of these folks said, well, let's be broad, let's be general.
But I agree with that gentleman a while ago when he said And barbering, some of this stuff needs to come out.
And that's
Because
fine.
our barbers don't come to school to learn how to dye hair. They don't
We
come
want to see it up
school.
there on that
Let's
screen.
put it up
Everybody
there.
that agrees
That's
with her,
good.
we need to
good,
see it on that
good
screen
comments.
with some detail.
Good comments. Let's put it up there. I don't know that. I'm not a barber.
So, real quick, I would probably say if, let's say, Lord forbid, we do go to shorter hours, I agree with him. We're pretty much selling the public short, right? So I think that if we are going to shorter hours, we should see how it is that we can raise the standards that we currently have, and I would like to see possibly a way to keep track of those. How can we follow up with that? Also, just to be clear, the fine ladies and gentlemen that are sitting over there, they're the ones who are going to be making the decision based on what we say, correct? So what I would like to know is what they think on the situation, because we can sit here and say everything that we think, but at the end of the day, they're the ones who are pulling the trigger. So, yeah.
Well, I would say this. They represent you. You guys are all peers. They're representing you, and they listen to you guys. Just because they're on the advisory board doesn't mean that they have the last say. You guys are going to provide them feedback. Yes, they'll be up here in the dais and saying, hey, here's the feedback that we receive from all of us, and as a group united, here's what we decided. We, not just them. Then those rules will go before our commission and say, hey, look, here's what the barbering group decided as a team, as peers. Remember, we've done this, if you guys been with us, we always do these open houses, these open forums, these open summits to come together to come to a final product.
Okay, so basically, is there a way to keep track? I see you getting all this feedback, right? Is there going to be a poll at some point that we all need to make sure that we are putting our input in, so we have an actual number that represents what we as our industry, or is it just like whoever decides to make the decision says, oh well, this was what we felt that the public said, which the majority may have not felt that way.
Well, let me try to answer it this way. We're going to utilize all of these comments, and we're going to bring it to them, roll up their sleeves, and they're going to try to make sense out of it, and maybe try to come up with a B, as Mary was saying. There's only an A, and then bring that back out to you guys, not in a summit, but in a rule format. Hey guys, remember what we talked about? Here's the attempt of what we thought you guys were saying. Now you still have an additional comment to say, hey, you know what? I didn't see my comment up there in with the new iteration. I want to make another change or another suggestion during the rule comment. Does that help? So, but we got to start somewhere. This is a draft. We got to talk about it, put something else together, and then put it out there again.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lily. The question I have is, it seems that the whole reason why we're having this summit is because the Cosmo changed. So we were told early on that we're not being bullied into a corner, and that what cosmetology law happened. And I'm also hearing that we don't really have a choice, because if the hours are reduced to 1,000, a Cosmo can get the 1,000 hours, do 300, and obtain the same license. So it's kind of two conflicting messages, in that one saying you're not being bullied into a corner, but it sort of sounds like we are, because the only reason why we're having this conversation is because the cosmetologist law was changed. So my question for that, so that is the whole reason why we're having this conversation, is because Cosmo was changed, right? That's the only reason. So it wasn't that the industry called for it necessarily. I'm not saying that it did or didn't, but the only reason why we're having this conversation is because the Cosmo law was changed. So my question to you is, where it says that the standard of what we teach, so say for example, currently now the hours are 1,500 hours to become a Class A barber, correct? Mm-hmm. If I decided that my program should be 2,000 hours, would I be able to do that? So that's my first question.
You can, but let's just go with let's just talk about the 1,000 hours. Let's just say this group, at the end of the day, and we pass a rule and we decide to reduce the hours to 1,000. Let's just say that. So that means now the new technical standard would be 1,000, which means we're going to change shears Y'all familiar with Shears, everybody?
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to change Shears, and Shears is going to say at 1,000 hours, because that's what we agreed, that's the minimum standard, these folks can go and test and get a license. If you want to teach at 2,000, you can. If you want to teach at 3,000, you can. But they're going to be able to test at 1,000 and take their examination, their written and practical, and if they pass it, because they got 1,000 hours, they can get a license. There are some students who actually have taken the test over and over and over and over, and they fail, and some of them will re-enroll. I think some of them re-enroll in Ron school. Say, I don't know what I'm doing. I got to go back to school. Do they have to go back to school? No, because they met the minimum standard. But do they need to? Probably.
Okay, so that's why I wanted clarity on that, because the way it sounds, it's like we have an option, but it doesn't seem like at 1,000 hours they would need to be dropped and they'd be able to take their test. So my next question is, if the whole reason why we're having this conversation is because the cosmetologist law was changed, then why are we in a hurry to make the change for our industry without having seen the effects for the cosmetology industry?
So I took this from Ray.
She's the attorney.
I love Ray. He knows I love him. However, the answer to your first question, you want to do a 2,000 hour? Yeah, you can do that. That's the answer. Now, is that smart? Is that wise? Is that fiscally responsible? I don't know. I doubt it. But yeah, you can do that. So that one. So why are we rushing? Not really rushing. Having a conversation. This doesn't change until September 1 for the dreaded cosmetologist word. Sorry for all the cosmetologists in the room. September applications received on or after September 1, 2020 is when that takes effect. So we could just keep doing our jobs every day. You know, my paycheck doesn't change based on what, you know, I'm working, right? So as y'all are working, and we could not ask, and I don't think a lot of people would like that, right? So we're not in a rush. You don't have to do anything. And if you don't want to do anything, tell us that you don't want to do anything. If you want to wait, tell us that you want to wait. But Mr. Progressive here, I'm just gonna, what's your name? Jason? Okay, Jason has some very strong views. I don't think he sits up and does nothing ever, right? Because he's gonna get that done. So we have someone who says we don't want anything possibly done. We have Jason who's like, I'm leading this charge. Stuff needs to change. So that's why we're here. And we have a year before cosmetology applications are taken that are affected by the change in the law. Again, they change the law and then they say, hey, we'll give you a little time to get that going. So all of the input has been really good. Someone had a question earlier, where's shaving in this new model? It's in the practice area. I'm not sure who sent that. We have our basics and everything that's included in the basics, things that have come from homing and stropping, now included in barber implementation, tools, equipment, and related theory. So that's going to be areas that are included in basics. So we've tried to get into your profession and do the best we can to try to move things around. But, you know, as everyone has said, we want to put some flesh, some meat on those bones as to what we've done, and for y'all to give us input on how you want us to proceed. You don't have to, again, do anything. That's the wiggle room that the barbers have. And as professionals who own businesses, schools, have these licenses, work for themselves, what's the best option for y'all? Because we could say, well, we're going to let, and we will. Someone asked earlier the statistics of who's going to cross over and how the education is going. We'll get that. We will gather that information, and as time moves on, we'll know more and more about how this change, and so will the legislature know how this change has affected the licensees. And we take our lead from them as to the laws, and how the practice goes, we take our lead from y'all. And we do that by our advisory boards who I want to say they have the pulse of the profession. So they've worked on this several years. Y'all are the pulse. Is it changing? Is it slowing down? Has it moved? what are we doing? Basic, is that good? Is it bad? Are we doing more? And then we have practice. How's that going? That's 750 hours. Business, 100 hours. Now I'm going to hand it over because we are just trying to get this information, and I'm sorry. Is it warm in here to anybody else? I wasn't sure if I was just having a personal summer or if it, so I'm glad to know it's just not me. But I'm handing this over. So for anyone, if you don't get your stuff in, let me give it here, then send us an email. We will tabulate. Actually, this process can tabulate all of the responses and put them in, so who said the crowdsourcing, and this gentleman talked about disruptive, changes and different things. He's right. So we want to get your actual words and thoughts and feelings on how your profession is going to change based on changes that are beyond any of our control. So.
Hi, I'm Sonia Shumway. I'm the owner of Cut Artistry Institute. I am a barber and cosmetology instructor. I guess my question is, if you change the curriculum, or I guess my opinion on this is, could we create advanced programs underneath the barbering program to offer, because this is a new day and age and a new generation, to offer aesthetics and offer styling to the barbers, because this is a new day and age.
Look at some of these comments up here.
Hold on. We have two right here, 1, 2, but I want, and then someone back there.
So I just want to interject before we hand it over to our advisory board. It's very important, the thoughts that are going on here. I'm seeing more of these with more detail. We really need to get to the nitty gritty. So if you're looking at the papers in your hand and you like 150, or you think there should be more of a designation delineation, we need to have those hours, not just say we need more or we need less. That doesn't give a lot of guidance to our advisory board. They're going to need some concrete details. Some of this stuff here is pretty detailed. I can make some of these bigger so you can see some of the comments, but we need to have, with credit hours, the financial will be higher. That's interesting comment, definitely significant, but it doesn't help us with what we're trying to accomplish, which is what are we going to have for that 1,000 hours if we move to it at all. Take out all aspects of all the manicures. Getting a lot of those comments. I think we're going to get a feel for left side, right side. We really need hours, details, if we're going to consider it at all, for our advisory board to have some guidance. They got a lot of work to do, we've got a lot of work to do, and we want that level of detail. So I'll turn it over to the advisory board.
I just want to make one comment about what we as the advisory board do. We don't just sit up here and listen to comments and then go behind closed doors and make a decision on what we feel is best. We actually live and breathe and work in this industry ourselves. We're all school owners, barbershop owners, barbers ourselves. So we actually take what you say into our own lives and careers when we leave here. So it's not just something that you say and we walk away and don't take it wholeheartedly into our decision making. We do, because when we leave this room, we have careers in this industry as well. Okay?
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My name's Lorraine Gritton. I own Champions Barber Academy in Waco. And I was wondering a little bit more about the House Bill 2698 and how that's going to affect us as well. From what the House bill reads, it talks about how the schools will be doing the practical examinations. And so anybody have any clarification on that? And also, I agree with this man about this disrupting the industry, but I feel like the distance learning could be something great if we could just get educated or put something together to understand how we can do this as schools. Because so many people are traveling to my school an hour and a half, and that would be like, they would like to do an hour and a half of learning from their home and then come to school. So anybody got any thoughts on that?
So because we have a quorum here and we've noticed it and it's not on the agenda, we can talk to you about 2698 afterwards. I just want to stick to the hours in 2847 for this.
So it's important to get these ideas. We're trying to keep us focused on this particular matter. The comments and questions that you have, you can actually submit them here, because we may end up with another summit or some other things that we have to deal with. We're trying to stay focused on this one thing, because we already knew. We did not expect as large a crowd to show up today, so we're actually very pleased about that. But we're trying to stay focused on this particular item so that we can give some guidance to our advisory board, and make sure y'all have heard all the ideas when it comes time to give y'all's input for the administrative rule process. Ms. Colleen, could you bring up the email one more time? Because I think some people may be chomping at the bit to start writing their document. This is the email that if you've got ideas you want to put on, you want to go back and look at your curriculum, you want to find out, oh, is it going to be okay with 100 hours, 150 hours for this particular? This is where we want you to send that information. This is for barbering. We're going to have another summit for cosmetology a little bit later today. We want to know for barbering. Try to keep it focused. It does have some commerce either way. The market disruption is another thing to think about, but we want the input on barber, specifically those hours. If you like Model A, just say thumbs up on Model A. If you don't, let us know what your model should be, B, C, or D. All right.
Okay, Kim Moyers, Navarro College. Just a couple comments, and coming from a community college, we kind of look at things a little differently. But with Cosmo, we've been thinking about this for a while. Okay, think about the bare minimum is your 1,000. In industry, all kinds of industry, what are they doing? Certifications, badges, different advanced training like they talked about. I mean, TDLR, all they're saying is 1,000 hours. We get the bare minimum. They're safe. That's all they care about. But us in the education industry, we need to start offering those things. Even with the Cosmo crossover, we're going to say, okay, this is the bare minimum. You can make the bare minimum. But you want advanced training, you can come back and take this little certification from us. You're going to earn more money because you have more knowledge. It's what they do at the hair shows when you go and get trained with companies. So we kind of need to think about the whole education process differently. Get on the bare minimum, but say that's going to give you the minimum. You need to take these other classes and things we offer to get to where you want to be in the industry. And then with the distant education, we've been doing that for a while. But as far as me, when I'm looking at 1,000 hours, I'm looking at hands-on 1,000. They're still going to do 300 or 400 hours from me and do all their theory online. I don't have to have that approved through TDLR. That's just how my program is. So they have a portal, Canvas, whatever you're doing for online education. So you get all that done at home, then you come into lab, and then we're going to put the hands-on. So they're able to still get everything they need, and they're still doing 1,400 hours because you're adding that into your curriculum. So think about that in a positive way. To 1,000 hours, okay, we got to do it, but there's so many more options with the way the world is today to enhance our programs, and TDLR is not going to govern that. They're never going to tell us how to teach it, right? So we have all these options. So think about the minimum and think about all of our advanced training that we can start offering, and you'll make more money in your schools.
This is David Gonzalez. So I want to point out something up here on this board that's significant. So we've got some input. Manicure, pedicure, color, and perming should be removed. Some people saying that barbers don't do that kind of work. It should be removed. Those are people's opinions, probably on point with some of y'all, but I want y'all to see this particular one. How many of the commission-owned schools? Our governor-appointed commission cannot have an interest in any of the programs that we regulate. So the commission members don't have any interest in barbers and cosmetology as far as business-related, because that would put them in conflict. That's important because our advisory board does have some interest. They're representing y'all's interest. They're representing their perspectives, but it's going to be advice that they give to the commission, who has the final say on whether this goes forward or not. And these are going to be people that are removed from the process so that they don't have a conflict when they're making the decisions. They're going to be listening to the feedback y'all provided. We're going to be providing all this information to our advisory board to make decisions on and for them to look at. All right, turn it over. Who was next?
Good
Yes,
morning,
sir.
everyone. Jacob Rodriguez, U.S. Army retired. I'm with Bevelle Barber School. I understand as a student right now, I'm doing 1,500 hours. It doesn't bother me. I'm at the school to learn. In my personal opinion, it's not fair that I will do 1,500 hours and somebody behind me is going to do 1,000. But that's okay because it's only fair if the cosmetologists are doing 1,000 hours and we're around the same subscription on giving services to people. It will only be fair for the barbers to get 1,000 hours. Now, the problem that I see with that is the flooding on the market. With having so many people graduating so early, then that is probably going to affect barbers per se, but it's not going to affect all these other businesses that are looking for barbers to work with them. So I'll say instead of draining on a glass of water like we're doing, it's just to make the decision, make it fair all around, and then let the market expand itself. Thank you.
All right, so let's drill down on the basics. Everybody got your sheet in hand? And I probably need my sheet as well.
Hey, David, one more.
Yes, sir.
Just one more.
Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Juan Garcia, and I own South Texas Barber College. And my reason for being here is that I think that the 1,500 hours for curriculum, it is correct for the simple reason that it takes a lot to teach the people that what we do. I feel that 1,000 hours is not enough to train a barber or a cosmetologist, and I have nothing to do with cosmetologists, just barbering. Most of the time, the opinions, the papers that are sent in, I listen to the barbering industry because that's my field. And I have trained over 25 barbers every year since 1978. And out of that, I got 95% barbers working today because they were trained correctly. At 1,000 hours, you cannot train a barber. I'm sorry for the opinions that you all give. I've been doing it all my life, and I've been an educator all over the world cutting hair. And I can honestly tell you that you need 1,500 hours because that's what it takes to teach a barber. Back when we changed the law, keep in mind, I'll just take another minute. Back when we changed the law from barbering to hairstyling in the barber industry, we knew we had to change the curriculum. Me and Ronnie Brown and other people were very instrumental in changing the curriculum for us. And we have done and accomplished it, and we have many people that cut hair, and they need 1,500 hours. This is only my state of Texas. I don't care about anybody else. I care about my own industry here. And I feel that without the 1,500 hours, you cannot train a good barber. And believe me, barbers in here, barbers on the outside, make more money than a lot of us that are sitting here. And I have 3 sons that cut hair. Each one of them makes over $200,000 a year. But they do everything. If you don't do both barber and hairstyling, then you're limited to maybe 50, 60, 70, 100,000. But if you train your barbers correctly, honestly, I can tell you that they can make money, but our industry should stay at 1,500. And I may be from the old school, but I changed with time. You know, I didn't like earrings, and I accepted them. You know, I didn't like the color change of different colors, but I accepted it. You know, but the industry is still the same. The barbering, the shaving, the facials, the hair cutting, and I'm glad that the PSI changed the ways of cutting hair for our testing because the young men that come out today, they want to use attachments. That's not a haircut. Understand that those fade haircuts. I have a grandson that's 9 or 10, and I promise you that if I teach him how to use a clipper, he could do the fades. Barbering is a different industry. A lot of people don't wear the hair like I wear. Why? Because I come from the old school, and I don't believe in cutting my hair off. You know, but I honestly tell you,
some of us don't have a choice.
Alone.
It just kind of falls out on its own.
You could get a hairpiece like mine.
Thank you.
David,
no, but
David,
one more thing that I'd like to say. Thank you for letting me talk, but this industry has to be the same if we're going to upgrade it the way we have it. The curriculum is correct.
I want to make sure that there's a distinction between what we are required to test for minimum competency and who you choose to do your barbering or cosmetology work. Yeah. Remember, I may choose to pay $200 an hour to my barber because I got some really nice hair and I want to keep it looking the same way. And some people may not choose to pay $200 for that haircut. They want to pay $50 because they don't have much hair and they're going to go to the guy that's going to get it done in 10 or 15 minutes on a schedule. So just make sure that we're thinking about these things. This is the industry we choose to participate in. Y'all choose to participate in. But some people are going to be making this amount of money. Some people are going to be making this amount of money. All our job is to ensure minimum competency. An exam is passed, not that they are the top barber with the best skills at 200 hours. That's going to be, as this gentleman said earlier, something that you have to have some pride in what you're doing.
You have to have a lot of pride in your work.
And you build that repertoire.
In order to do well in this industry, you have to have a lot of pride, a lot of work, go in early and work late. I promise you, you're going to make some money. Our industry is really good. We change, but I don't think we need to change the 1,500 hours.
Mary,
that's my opinion.
Thank you so much. I wanted to Thank you. I wanted to make sure, because I've heard several comments, because the barbers I know, I have a husband, I have sons, they do barber stuff, that kind of the old-fashioned, cuts and so forth. But as we go forward and we talk about this model, and we talk about basics, and then we talk about the practice, some of the things in here, and I've heard comments about the hair coloring, chemical waving, so forth and so on, those things are actually in the barber law. So that's why they're in the model. Some things, even if you don't do it, it is law. By law, you can do it, and by law, we have to include it. And that's 1601.002. Actually, it's the definition of barbering. And it goes into treating a person's hair by arranging, beautifying, bleaching, cleansing, coloring, curling, dressing, dyeing, processing, shaping, singeing, straightening, styling, tinting, and waving. So just as we move forward with the different models, some of the stuff will have to remain as an option. It's in your law and your definition of what you do. So, but David, I think you wanted to move them back through this model if they had any more suggestions.
So we've been getting a lot more detail. I like it. I need to have y'all read with me for the basics. Anatomy and physiology, disorders of the skin. These are things that would be included in basics, and proposed in Model A is 150 hours. So if you feel differently, I've seen some people putting up here, take out manicuring. That gives us some guidance, but what do you put in its place? Do you want to add something else? Do you want to increase something? We need to hear those numbers if we're going to give guidance to advisory board.
And we cannot take out manicuring because that is also part of the definition of a barber.
Sorry about that.
So I just, and I want to thank Heather Muir because she has the law up. And so that's something that, give us your suggestions, your ideas, and we'll do what we can do. That's all I want to know.
So the updated terminology for theory areas of study that are included in the basics includes honing and stropping, now included in barber implements, tools, equipment, and related theory. The updated terminology for practical work areas of study that are included in basics, and this is the work that our advisory work group put together, would include barber implements, now referred to as a barber implements, tools, equipment, and related theory. First aid and safety precautions, now referred to as infection control, first aid and safety. Remember, I think everybody was nodding heads when we talked about the terminology has been dated. It's been there for a long time, and things have changed over the years. We have an opportunity to be more thorough in what's included in those basics, the theory areas. Then we also have processing, straightening, waving hair, and bleaching and dyeing of the hair. I saw some comments saying we don't need any of that, but if it's something that you can do as a barber, it may not be something we can take off of it. Y'all have got to make sure that y'all are reading the statute as well. The current practical work terms that would not be included in basics would be the scientific fundamentals of barbering. So as y'all go through these lists and give us y'all's input, we need that level of detail considered. For the practice of barbering, we've got 750 hours designated. I've seen a lot of people say Model A looks good. They've put some trust in the advisory board work group that they reviewed these things, but if there's something missing, if there's some detail, and I'm talking about any of these, they've got the list: shaving, mustaches and beards, hair cutting. This is the stuff that would be included in practice. The updated terminology for practical work, what they're proposing would be dressing the hair, now referred to as hair cutting, arranging, beautifying, and curling, singeing, the thing that we went through the earlier list. I need y'all to read that level of detail, because y'all are going to have an opinion on this later on. When we propose a rule, when it's put out there for everybody and their mother to give their input, these words are going to mean something. And you're going to want to scratch through one of them. You may want to add one, and we can take that input, but we'd like to get it up front while we're kind of doing the pre-work right now. We want to get that feedback beforehand so we can be as inclusive as possible and maybe think about all the ideas that were shared today. Class D, 1,000 would not have styling or color. Could there be 2 barber licenses, Class A and Class D? What does cutting a client's nails have to do with the hair? That's why they have a nail salon, so we're going to get a nail tech license. And change the statute. That is every 2 years. That is an option to pursue. That's not something that we are a resource for the legislature, but we're not the ones that are going to be moving forward or proposing legislation. That's something that you guys would have to do or the legislators would have to pursue. How are we doing on time?
We are way over time, and which is fine because we want you all to have as much time and opportunity to comment, which is why we put up the email, and we'll put up the email again. My major concern with the time is that we're losing people because I think they're hungry. So, and I want them to eat. But
yes.
I think, David, you covered the basics and practice, and people have had a chance to kind of give us input, so forth, and we have that email out there. But the last area that we have it separated into is business. And, okay. But so if there are comments about business, Texas barber law, rules, customer service, barbershop management, ethics, image, sanitation, hygiene, so forth, we have it currently, at 100 hours. So if we have comments for that as well, please give us those. So as we move forward, because let's see. It's about 11, so it's lunchtime for a whole lot of folks.
We're going to move quick on
Yeah.
this because this is you being king or queen for a day, so it doesn't really stop if we end today's summit. You can be king or queen anytime we go out for strategic planning. When you send your email to the Bar Summit email, you're being king or queen for a day. You're telling us what would you change the number of hours for barbering to 1,000 and why. This is your model. We've got Model A we gave you, got your feedback on. If you need to go back home and type something up to email us, you can. But if you got something that you feel really strongly about and you wanted to start doing like what this person has done, whether it's cosmetology or barbering, 1,000 hours is sufficient. The responsibility for teaching is the instructors. The responsibility for learning is the students, I expect. And we need to hear that input. So this is king or queen for a day. You have the opportunity to give us your last thoughts.
While you're putting up those comments, let's go through this process in our head. Okay? Just I just want to paint this out there for you. So let's say we don't do anything in barbering, right? You're like, I heard Ray, I heard Ray.
Your mic, Ray. It's not working.
We're not doing anything, right? We stay the status quo. We stay at 1,500 hours. Cause obviously is going to change, so we move forward. And here comes a year later, and maybe the board or you guys identify nothing, or you identify issues because of the change. Who knows what the issues are? I have no idea. That's why we're talking this out. There may be maybe another summit in the future to address those issues. And what would that be? Who knows? It may even come to, if the issues is significant, maybe as David was saying, legislature now puts in a law, which I rather take care of my industry myself before somebody tells me what to do, right? That's just me. So but they put something in the law, now it's going to be, guess what? We're not asking you anymore. Now we're going to say these are the things we need to do. So just be mindful of all those things. We cannot change. We can change a little. We can just not do anything at all. We can sit back and wait and see what's happening with the cosmetology. Look at the, from the mezzanine, the peanut gallery, and see what's happening, and then maybe react then. I don't know, but that's kind of what we want to hear from you.
Hello. So I just have a question. It did come up on the screen, but we've been having this discussion in our cosmetology school already. And that is, what if a student drops out and they're like, okay, it changed to 1,000 hours. I have 500. I'm going to drop out and I'm going to re-enroll after September 1st of 2020. What happens in that case? And the same thing is going to come up with barbering as well, to where are there protections to the students? I mean, because we're already going to be dropping. I mean, I think our enrollment is going to go down drastically as soon as everyone figures out, hey, after September, we only have to do 1,000 hours. So our school's going to see less and less enrollment from now until then as well.
I don't want to take up much time, the barbering time. I want to make sure we keep on track with this. That answer is going to be a long.
The barbering as well. So like, can you drop out and then re-enroll after
the student can do. These things don't look like it's the student. The student can do. The student can drop or enroll and do whatever they want, right?
Right.
So they can drop whenever they want and they can enroll whenever they want. That doesn't prevent a student from doing anything. But think of it like for cause. Think of it for practicality. If we put the standard together and let's just say it goes into effect May, let's just say May 1. The new standards is up, the rules are approved, they're adopted, and voila, we have the new 1,000 hours technical standards, right? There's a student currently enrolled in the 1,500-hour program. What should we do? Well, the school is going to have an option to say, you know what, let's make a change to our curriculum now, as this is now in effect, and let's get these guys out into the field. If the student decides to drop and then re-enroll, it's probably quicker if they stay in the 1,500-hour, because remember, it doesn't go into effect till September. So is a student going to drop out in May because they found out, oh, the new curriculum is there and it's $1,000, where I'm just going to wait until September to get a license, when you could just finish the 1,500 hours in another 3 months and get your license? So does that make sense? There's a lot of things happening, and that's why I really don't want to get into the execution part of it. The point is, we as an agency, we're always going to be mindful of the school and the students. There are people going to be caught in that line in the sand, and we're going to help that school and that student to overcome those barriers, if those barriers exist, because there's going to be people right at that point, and we're going to help those students to make sure that they get what they need. Ron Brandhouse.
Good morning. My name is Ron Brown. Some of you I've met, some of you know me, and some of you may have never heard of me. I've been doing this business for a long, long time. I've had a license since 1966. That's 53 years. I know, because it's 2 years longer than I've been married. These guys over here on this advisory board, when they put on that hat, I want you to understand what they did. They didn't just remain part of what we do. They took on a responsibility to steward an industry that affects many lives, not just theirs. It is, wow. If you don't know what kind of pressure that can be, I can tell you, because I've been there. I have a lot of respect for what they do, because it's not easy. TDLR has come in and taken us over in 2005, and they've done a lot of things for us. But lobby for us, they cannot do. By state law, they cannot do. If you have a question on what you need to do, you need to get up and find out who your reps are, who your senators are, and you need to go talk to them. You want to know who pushed this agenda? You need to go find out who pushed this agenda and got cosmetology to 1,000 hours. And you need to go talk to them. I've done this for a long time, like I said. I remember when barbers and cosmetologists went to war because we didn't like each other. That's a crying shame. We provide a service to the public. We provide health and welfare and sanitation to the public. And that's on us. And if we try to get one out of balance with the other, if you've ever driven a car and one tire is low and one tire is full of air, it's going to pull one way or the other, and it's going to be wrong. We've got to stay where we are, and we've got to stay pulling together. I don't believe that we should be one license. I believe separate but equal. Because we're much more diverse. We're harder to attack. Cosmetology has us beat because they have people that get together and lobby and go and talk to their representatives. And barbers, what do? We don't even have an organization. We don't even support TDLR to help us. We look at them to take care of us. No, come on, guys. That's not what this is about. This is our industry. They're reaching out to us. They don't have to, but they are. We're the ones that are going to make the choices and make the decisions that are going to affect our lives and our students' lives. And if you're not in here working for your students, I don't know what you're working for. They're what puts you in business. That's what keeps you in business. That's what your whole focus ought to be. And if we don't keep that in mind, we're in trouble. I'm really glad to be here. I'm glad to be part of this. I'm glad to be part of TDLR's message to us that they want to help. They want to get us going. If we're going to step back to 1,000 hours, like I said, I've been doing it since '66. In '66, it was 1,200 hours, and you got out of school, and you went to work for someone for 6 months. It was called an apprentice program. Would that work today? I wonder, because you know what that shop owner is supposed to do in an apprentice program? They're supposed to take that kid out of school and teach them something, not just take their money. They need to teach them and further them. So if you want people that are coming out of school, this is an entry-level thing coming out of school, barber or cosmetology. If you want to step up as a shop owner and take somebody in on an apprentice program for 6 months and teach them how to keep books, teach them how to do towels, teach them how to sweep floors, teach them how to do a better haircut, then maybe we ought to think about that. But we need to go and think of where we're going to go and look at both sides of the coin. Because not one side, that bright, shiny side, is not the one that's always going to be the one we need to go to. We need to figure out what's going to work. We need to work with the advisory board, and we need to work with TDLR. That's my advice, that's my recommendation, and that's what I'll sign on to do.
Thank you, Ron, for those powerful words. Y'all are doing really good. Let's get to the last slide. It's final thoughts. So you're king or queen for a day, final thoughts. We're going to get y'all to lunch. If y'all wanted to come back for the afternoon show, make sure you tip your waitresses on the way out. No, really feeling good about the participation, the feedback, and it doesn't end today. We are going to keep the Bar Summit email up there to the end of the week. So Friday, you got till Friday to get with your friends and family, really think out what your ideas are. Remember, it's important. It needs to look something like this if our advisory board is going to be able to do something with it. I definitely heard the ideas. We don't want any changes, but think about what's happening out there and what's going to affect your industry, whether you do anything or not. The cosmetology changes that we have to implement by law, it's not a gun to your head, it's not a bullying thing, it's something to think about. You got to be thinking about this so you don't have things happening to you. You're involved, and you decide where this industry is going to go and what barbering is going to have happen to it. So last one, final thoughts. If I'm not mistaken, I think it actually lets you do emojis, so if you like the smiley face or anything like that, just be careful with those emojis. Yes, sir.
All right. As a final thought, does anyone know Mara Scally Sheehan? She's not related to Matthew Sheehan that was actually pushing for us to deregulate this industry out of West Texas. Like Mr. Brown spoke, I like to research where these things stem from. But Mara is the president of the National Association of Barber Boards of America. I sat with them, I attended their forum, well, our forum, because I'm actually a member now, in Nashville, Tennessee in February. And only representative for Texas. So I encourage everybody in this room, with all of this passion that I'm seeing here, is join this national organization. I'm a Texas man, born and raised. However, I'm a barber, and that is a universal language, same as cosmetology. We protect the health, wealth, and safety of the general public. In that, she discussed what she does is she revises the book. So everybody in here knows it. We've seen a picture if you look at the Milady book. She spoke about how this same change has already happened, and it's happened right under our noses with the books. She's been revising this book for the past 16 years. In the last general forum that they had with students, they got a poll back about what the students wanted, and they actually wanted more white space. They wanted more pictures in the books. They wanted more tips to the side because that's the way that they learn. They didn't want to see all of those words. It was discouraging for them. So that's the way to show you that scaling back has already worked, and it's worked, and the students have already pushed it through. I think it's best for us just to put these collective efforts together and look and see how to make this thing work for us and not against us. Thank y'all for your time.
That was a nice final thought. Anybody else? I'm seeing them up here.
So let me say this real quick. After the final thought, I feel like Jerry Springer or something. When the session is over, I know a lot of you will have questions for some of the staff. That's great. We're here to answer them. But if it's something that will inspire you to tell us comments, make sure you go back to that email that we showed you, the Bar Summit, and provide it in there in writing. If you just tell us, I'm definitely not going to remember. So if you just tell me verbally, it's not going to happen. So, but if you talk to us and we have the conversation and it makes you more confident on those final thoughts, make sure you send it to that email.
I'm going to turn the microphone over to our chair to see if he has our advisory board members, if y'all have any final words to share with the group here.
All right, thanks. Heard a lot of great things today. I guess back in April, I think it was, when we were when legislation was meeting, we need that same energy that we had today in Austin for legislation to talk to our state reps and things of that nature. So everything I was hearing today was some great stuff on both sides, whether it's for or against, whatever the case may be. What we have to do is get in front of it when it's happening. My family has been in cosmetology for a long time, and we got in barber recently in 2011. So when I did, I started really studying the barber industry to understand the way people think, if it's different or whatever the case may be. And when I went to Austin, I know I'm in Austin now, but I went to the state capitol in April and listened and actually testified when they were trying to make the changes or discussing the changes. And that's when, like Mr. Quinton said, they were talking about the deregulation. And so some of the proposed bills were talking about the reduction of hours. And I only saw cosmetologists around me at that time. So when you ask the questions of why this happened, or why these things happen, or why this happened, why this happened, how do you change it, how do you do this, you got to really do some research and understand how the law works and understand who's making the decisions for us. You know, these folks that I was looking at on the panel, they didn't know anything about our business. You know, they didn't understand what barbering is and the history of barber and the difference of cosmetology. They kept saying that they had people testifying that you can teach this in 1 week. So they were talking about deregulating, not about the hour stuff. They was like, we don't need to go to school for barber because schools are charging $20,000 to $25,000 for the curriculum anyway. So they were talking about the debt that they're putting students in. So when you start showing up like this, and like Mr. Brown said, we don't have a organization in Texas in barbering. I've been to many of them in cosmetology, and I'm members of some organization in cosmetology. But when I reached out to people to say, hey, let's go down, I reached out to some school owners that I know, and I was like, hey, man, I'm going down to Austin, spur of the moment. I just took off and drove down here and told my wife I'll be back. And she was like, what are you doing? And I said, I got to go talk. I don't know what I'm doing. And I showed up in a suit and looked up at the Capitol. I was like, whoa, I knew nothing of what to do. But I asked questions. I was like the first one on the lawn. I saw people jogging. I was there early. Because they told me you had to get there early to sign your name up. And so there was people out there picketing and protesting and all kind of stuff with other issues. So I kept calling my father because he knows a lot about this. I was like, man, luckily I still have my father around so I can still ask these questions. See, I am almost 50. I still don't know. You know, yes, I'm the chairman of the barber board, yes. However, I show up and I'm very passionate about this business. So I was really elated when I was sitting in the back with Brian. I started seeing all these people come in because I was like, oh, I expect this for cosmetology, but I don't expect it for barbers. So this is a great sign. We ought to applaud ourselves just for coming here today. That's great. So understand that, you know, this is a great beginning for our future right here. Just showing this room just shows me that we're so passionate about this business that we want it to continue. We want to educate more. We want quality haircuts. We want everything. We want a lot. We want our industry matters, is what I'm hearing. Our industry matters. So if it matters to you as much as it means to me, let's just show up when it counts and make sure that people we vote for in our state reps and things of that nature, make sure they hear us. Blow their phone up like we blow TDLR up, right? They can't make the changes. Believe me, they're not even making the changes. They can't. You know, so I hear my couple over here talking. I feel your pain as well. I do understand. It's really confusing, statutory and law and rules. I get it. I was going crazy with 16 and all that. I was like, what is all this? So I'm studying because I have to be a leader, you know, so I have to lead, so I have to know. So if somebody come to me and ask me a question, I can't say I don't know. I have to answer that question. Or at least I'll find out that answer so I can get back with them and give them a very educated answer, the correct answer, so they will pass on the information correctly. Talking to students, you know that students don't really understand yet, but they will. And it's our job to provide that leadership to them so they will be a better barber and a better professional in this industry. I don't want this industry to go away. Just imagine. And like Quinn said, all over the U.S., like my man said earlier, all over the U.S., they're opening up franchise barbershops and beauty shops all the time, every day, and they want them in faster, faster, faster. So the faster I can get you out of school, the more shops I can open up. Just look at the world, what's going on. So quality, quantity, whatever the case may be, let's just fight for what we know that's right, but let our voice be heard in the correct way. So then we won't be last on the totem pole and have to wait for Cosmo. We were behind Cosmo? Come on now, we were first, right? That's what I heard and read. So I understand both sides, I do, and I really appreciate everybody for coming out today and hearing your passion. I love it. We do have a meeting next week on Monday.
Chairman Jemison, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Week before, after that, right? I feel like it's running together. But thank y'all for showing up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. With that said, I think we're closing out the meeting. Again, Bar Summit, share it with your friends.
Hey, David, can I close out real quick?
Yes, of course. You're my boss.
Before y'all leave, I just want to tell y'all thank y'all, number one, for coming. It's very important that you're present here. Another thing to keep in mind is that this is not the last shot. That's what you got to understand. I've heard so many people say incredible things today. The last thing to keep in mind is there's a process called sunset. The sunset process evaluates an agency's statutory authority. Should it exist? Should it continue to exist? Should it be improved? How can it be modified? Well, we're undergoing sunset, so along with this change we're talking about, if you go to our webpage, you'll see an item that says participate and give your voice to sunset. You're going to be able to help them understand what's important to your industry. So that whole thing that Ron just said about really making your voice count, this sunset process is designed specifically for that. It's specifically designed for you folks to say, hey, you know what? I think the statute should be changed to include X. I think the statute should be changed to include Y. I don't like that we're different from the cosmetologists in this way. I like that we're different here. You're going to have that opportunity, and that group right there is part of the legislative process. So your voice will go directly to some decision makers. So avail yourselves of this process today, and then also go to our webpage and check out the sunset process, because that's a whole different avenue that you can make a really big impact in how you guys do things. Now, David invited y'all back this afternoon. I don't mind y'all coming back, but our house was not nearly big enough to hold y'all. So if you come back, we're going to love on you. We're going to give y'all biscuits. We're going to give y'all some cold water with a little sweat on the outside. But we may put y'all on overflow, okay? Because the cosmetologists need to have their opportunity to talk as well. But I am so grateful for everyone coming out. I want to thank my staff and the team. Y'all did an incredible job. If y'all have one more clap in you, please give it to my folks. They did an incredible job. All right, David, I'm letting you close. I'm done.
Last shot, Bar Summit at tdlr.texas.gov. You ain't got to go home, but you can't stay here.